Welcome in Monday Live. I am Jason Priester, all ClemsonTigers.com, part of the Clemson Maven multimedia platform. Yeah, it is official. If it wasn't already official, man, it is definitely official now. The Roy bus has crashed and burned. I'm pretty sure I saw it on the side of I-40 leaving Raleigh last Saturday, just engulfed in flames. Just totally engulfed, man. It's all you can do at this point is, laugh about it. Otherwise, for some of you that are really emotionally tied to this program, otherwise all you can do is cry. It's at that point now. And I'm using a little different setup here tonight, so if you can't hear me, let me know. I think I got it. I think I got it set right. But let me know if you can't. If you can't hear me, let me know. But yeah, it's things went from bad to worse in a hurry. You go up to Raleigh and beat a team that's just, they just, geez, man, they had outside of two plays, they had 80 yards of offense and still beat you by a touchdown. Oh man, it is. And most of the people in Raleigh must don't be too happy either, because at halftime of that game, over a third of the people on the other side of the stadium, opposite of the press box, the left hand end zone, and over there on the other opposite sidelines, over a third of them left, never came back. So it was weird. We're talking about a 10-7 game when North Carolina State was up, and their fans are leaving out of there like that. So it's not just at Clemson where fans are disappointed. And you got some up there in Raleigh that must have been disappointed while their team was leading. But somebody sent me this stat a little while ago that was just eye-opening. Clemson has had 200, and this is per David Hale of ESPN. Clemson's had 262 designed runs. 90 of them have gone for a yard or less. That is 34%. That ranks 109 out of 133 nationally. That's just brutal. That is just brutal, and that is a clear indication of where this running game, running behind this offensive line is right now. It's as discombobulated of an effort as I've ever seen, I think, out of any offensive line. It's weird. I already see somebody talking about the sack fumble was really embarrassing, where O-line just stood there and did nothing. Yeah, I don't know what the heck was going on that play. It's almost like the wrong protection was called, because nobody was responsible for the edge rusher, which is, I don't know of any passing play call designed supposed to lead the quarterback's blind side unprotected. So something was off on that deal big time. But that's not the only thing that's off, man. It's again, we talked about it last week. You got to take a long, deep look at what's going on with that offensive line, because it kind of all starts and stops there. If you can't block up front, there's not a lot you're going to be able to do on offense. I mean, you can only scheme around that so much, and I think they've done about as well as they can scheming around it between the 20s, but the closer you get to the end zone, the harder it is to scheme around that kind of, those kind of deficiencies. The field shortens up, you just can't scheme around it. That's why you see in Clemson outgain opponents in all these losses, because they can, move the ball a little bit between the 20s, but the closer they get to the end zone, the harder it gets, and the problems with the offensive line just intensify. Did see Clemson punch it in twice in the red zone the other day, something they have struggled to do. But other than that, not a lot of positives on the offensive side of the ball. Just not a lot of positives. It's hard to watch. It is extremely hard to watch. I got a feeling there's going to be some massive changes on the staff coming in the off season, and I'm not sure that it is. People want to. The first thing people want to jump to is coaching, and I get it, man. There's probably some weak spots on that coaching staff or inexperience on that coaching staff, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. I ain't convinced it's all coaching. I mean, I know coaching's part of it. I think you got to look deeper than that, man. You got to. I mean, it's not just the offensive linemen that don't block, man. The wide receivers don't block out on the perimeter. Well, when you do get some gains out there on the edge or on the outside, the wide receivers hold or do something dumb and the play gets called back. And most other times they're just the blocking's just lackluster at best. So it's not just the offensive line that's not blocking well. You got to take a long. There's a lot of things I think you got to sit down and re-examine. Maybe the kind of offensive lineman you're recruiting, are they the right kind of guys to fit the system you now want to run? Do you have some areas in your strength and conditioning department that need to be addressed? Do you need to look at the way you practice, look at the way you do off-season conditioning? I don't think anything is off limits, man. Everything's up. To me, everything would be up for examination. It's just because as bad as Clemson's offensive line has been with technique and stuff like that, they get pushed around. They just don't look that strong, man. They just get out muscled sometimes. It's like I said, it's hard to watch, man. Whew, it is hard to watch, and I don't see it getting any better. I mean, any better for the remainder of this season. There's no way to turn this thing around. I'm not saying Clemson can't win any more games because obviously they can, but after 8 games, you kind of are who you are. It's just it's mind numbing. That's what it is. It is mind numbing. This is our first year following Clemson. What do you think the 3 top issues are in turning things around for next year? You got to address that offensive line first and foremost, and you have to figure out what the root cause is. Is it coaching? Is it something deeper than that? Again, is it the way you're training them in the weight room? Is it I don't know. Is it the guys you're recruiting? The guys you're is it your evaluations? You got to decide what are causing the problems and address them. To me, that's first and foremost. I think you got a young quarterback that does not trust his offensive line at all. I mean, I haven't seen the numbers from Saturday, but I mean, he was pressured over 50% of the time against Miami. And going into Saturday, he was pressured on 34% of his, I think it was 34% of his pass attempts on the season. That is eye-opening. That is just absurd. You got an antsy quarterback already who you're trying to grow up on the field, and he can't trust his pass protection. He's got no running game to help take the pressure off of him. I think it leads to him trying to do too much. But that would be me first and foremost, is dressing that offensive line and doing anything and everything you can to help those guys take a big jump, because you can't go grab 3-4 out the portal. I mean, it's just it's just not an option. You got who you got. Then you got to address defensive end for next year. You're losing XT, you're losing Maskell. You're set up nicely on the interior of that defensive line, but you don't have much depth at defensive end. You got TJ Parker, got those other 2 freshmen. AJ Hoffer looked really good playing Saturday. Got David Ajabi, who they brought in last year. He's kind of a tweener. I'm kind of interested to see where he'll be come next year. But other than that, you got Cade Denoff and Zaire Patterson. You're talking about guys that have been here for several years now, and Patterson don't even get on the field. Denhoff's a career backup so far. I mean, I just don't know how much trust you put in those guys to be impact players next year. I think that's an area you have to explore options in the portal to shore that up. You need to hope and pray one of those two wide receivers or maybe both of them come in and can bring some playmaking ability, stretch the field ability. Because Clemson has lacked the alpha dog at wide receiver for 3 years now. They need somebody to come in that room and remind them how to block on the perimeter, because obviously it's either not getting coached very well during the week or it's not translating from practice to the field for whatever reason. Because those guys are not very good at it. I'm kind of going on. I'm kind of getting into the weeds with what you asked me here. All right, top 3 things. You got to address the weak spots on the coaching staff. You got too much inexperience on the offensive side of the ball, period. I'm not saying all those guys are terrible coaches. I have no idea. Not in that building every day. So that's out of my realm of expertise. But Dabo might have hired too many guys with little to no experience in too short a time span. The little experience they do have, pretty much all of it's at Clemson, so they don't have any outside experience to lean on or rely on when things start going off the rails like they have this season. They just rely on what they've learned at Clemson, and what they've learned at Clemson ain't working right now. So I think that's one thing. You got a couple of weak spots, I think, on that staff you got to address. Again, you got to fix that offensive line. And number 3, you got to make sure you've got a quarterback next year that's ready to play. You can't have another quarterback going through growing pains again. This was supposed to be, this was not supposed to be the year that Klubnik was not supposed to be still going through these kind of growing pains 8 games into the season. You got to find a way to grow him up in a hurry before next year, or you got to seriously consider going to get a 1-year rental guy, because I don't think Vizina will be ready next year. I think he was that far away when he came out of high school. So to me, those are the top 3 things. Shore up that coaching staff, identify and address whatever's causing your issues along that offensive line, and make sure you got a game-ready quarterback come day one, because you're not opening on the road at Duke next year. You get to open against what might be the 3-time defending national champs and the Georgia Bulldogs. We remember what happened to Clemson's offense last time they played Georgia. They got beat up, beat down, and embarrassed, and they've never looked the same since. We went from Dabo saying up to 10 guys are good enough to start to 1 injury of Parks just causing the O-line to fall apart. Something doesn't fit. I honestly think Dabo Swinney is perplexed that he doesn't have better depth than he does. I think he expected them to have more depth this year. I don't think he was just saying that and didn't believe it. I think he really believed it. Maybe not 10 guys, but, the 7 or 8 that he talked about sometimes. And they haven't had it. Make no mistake, Walker Parks going down was a major blow. But he went down, early. That offensive line didn't play. They played fairly well against Florida State, even with Mitchell Mays not playing fairly good at right guard. But it has gone off the rails since then, and it's got progressively worse with each passing week. I like to move moving Lee inside and letting Sadler start at left tackle. At least now you're deciding on 5 and rolling with those guys. I think we've been hammering on that for about 3 weeks now, about that rotation and 5 guys not being able to gel. At least now you get 5 guys that'll be able to at least try and gel. I mean, I guess there's one positive to that. Ran the ball great last year with the same O-line. What happened? Yeah, I can't. You got a new offense. You're doing some different things in the running game. I've noticed Clemson's linemen do a lot. It seems to me like they do a lot more pulling now than they have in years past. It's not something I've gone back and watched and made sure that what I'm seeing is what is real. Maybe I'm just seeing things, but it feels like they're doing a lot more pulling than they have in the past. And when Clemson's offensive linemen, particularly those guards, get out and pull, they look slow, man. They just look slow. It is not their strong suit. Um, and Syracuse exposed a weakness in this offensive line. They use stunts and twists, and it confused them. And every team's done it since, and they've had no answer for it. It just they no answer. It's 4 games now. You got teams using the same thing that Wake Forest did on them. That Wake Forest hadn't been doing very much of leading up to that game, and they did it some against Clemson, and it worked. It worked very well, and other teams have employed that same strategy. O-line hasn't picked up the scheme. I think it's between the years. They look lost, almost block each other. Yeah, I tend to lean towards thinking part of it is the new scheme too. I don't know, man. I just don't know that that's all of it. I'm sure it plays a part, but it is just brutal. It's hard to watch, man. Yep, they they look like me after we got finished eating in the press box in Raleigh Saturday. Worst food at the stadium I have had yet, if my memory holds. It was, I think it was frozen chicken tenders. We usually get fed pretty well most places. Not Saturday. I have said for 4 years the essence strength and conditioning has been bad. Yeah, well, I don't know that it is. I'm just saying, you got to look at it. You got the same guy running it and has been running it forever, but he has had a lot of turnover on that staff. They lost Smotherman when Venables left. So I don't know how hands on Batson is anymore. So maybe that's something you got to look at. But yeah, you have been saying that for a while. You've asked me that a few times. Any news on the announcement to leave the ACC? Not really. I don't think you're going to hear anything about this until the new revenue model gets situated after the 3 new teams were added. Everybody just assumed adding those 3 teams are going to speed this whole thing up. Well, it's probably actually slowed it down a little bit, or at least you know, the public part of it. And I don't know that some big announcement that we're leaving and going here is coming, or in the imminent future here. That might not be for a little while yet. I do think something's coming, but I don't think it's going to come until probably after they get the new revenue sharing thing, that how they're going to divide up the money now with the 3 new teams and stuff, and all that's finalized and official. After that, but I don't think the timeline's changed. I think Clemson's out, you know, no later than after the 2027 season. I can see it being after 2026. Doubt it'll be after 2025. I definitely don't think it. I mean, it's going to be 2 or 3 more years, I believe, though. Just too much time left on that deal. But we'll see, because it's going to end up getting negotiated down somehow. Hearing Dabo say we aren't very good instead of one play away. Yeah, his the narrative's changed a little bit. His post game comments Saturday were eerily similar, or at least some of them were eerily similar to some comments he made after the loss in the bowl game to South Florida back in 2010. You know, he said some eerily similar things. So make of that what you will. I saw the Ellis Tolbert, who used to do the 4th and 16 podcast, tweeted out that old interview. I think it was yesterday or the day before, and I listened to it, and and I was like, man, it seemed like I just heard this last night, or a lot of it anyway. Obviously it wasn't exactly the same, just some eerily similar things. But yeah, the narrative's changed a little bit. I think Dabo Swinney really believed they were going to be good this year. And if you listen to some of the players, their practices are really good. They're just having problems getting that to translate to the field. They don't know how to make it happen for whatever reason. I believe 100% that Dabo Swinney thought they were going to have a good team this year. I mean, like a really good team this year. And I think he's about as surprised as the rest of us that it hadn't played out that way. And, now he's got to figure out the fix. I think that he believed getting a new offensive coordinator to come in here and retool that offense and revamp that scheme and a fresh perspective was what was needed to fix the issues that had ailed them the past 2 years. And now he's finding out it's a little bit. It's going to take more than that. It was deeper than just installing a new scheme. Do you think the path forward at the end of the season to improve O-line play, wide receiver play, and helping out K? Do you think Dabo will use the portal for defensive ends, possible O-line, or wide receivers? I don't know what the path forward is. Like I said earlier, once the season's over, you gotta let the season play out and judge the whole thing. And the ebbs and flows and the progression or regression or whatever it may be come that time. And then you got to sit down and identify the root cause. And that's when you address it. You got to figure out what the root cause is. Maybe it's as simple as who's coaching them. Maybe it runs deeper than that. It ain't like Thomas Austin's offensive lines at Georgia State sure didn't look like what we see right now. Those guys could run the ball. So, I mean, maybe it's not quite that cut and dry, and the issues are a little more complex. I don't know. Wide receiver play, I think you got help on the way. I mean, you just don't. Clemson does not have a guy, an outside threat that scares anybody. I mean, Bo Collins is solid at best, but he's not that guy that opposing defensive coordinators are sweating over. They know he's not the guy that's going to, routinely catch 8 balls for 120 yards and score a couple of touchdowns, 3 or 4 times a season. He might do it once, but that's about it. He's kind of what he was Saturday. He makes the big catch, but he also makes the big penalty and has the big drop. Clemson needs a guy on the outside, that can stretch the field and turn 50-50 balls into 80-20 balls instead of them being 20-80 balls. They need an alpha dog. They've not had one since T. Higgins left. They need an alpha dog, and I think they got help on the way. And Wesco and T.J. Moore. As far as going to the portal, Dabo wanted to go to the portal after the 2021 season to address the offensive line. They made it. I mean, they made a concerted effort to bring in a starting center. or let's just say interior guy after that season. They offensive line was one of the areas they were going to look to address after last season if they would have had the room. You just have to see what kind, where you are after the season and what kind of spots you've got open because Clemson's not losing. You have to see how you have to wait and see how many leave out because they're really only set to lose the one, right? Off the top of my head, the only one that's going to be done after this season is Walker Parks. I mean, I expect a couple to transfer out, guys that have gotten passed by and they know they aren't going to play. But you just have to see what you got, and whether you go to the portal for a wide receiver is probably going to solely rest on what you think you've got coming in Wesco and Moore and how much of an immediate help they're going to be. Because I think wide receiver is another position they were going to at least explore the possibility of looking at in the portal last year. Defensive end, I didn't say nothing about it. Defensive end. Defensive end is for me, I think that is a position Clemson's absolutely going to try to use the portal in. They've still got an open spot for a defensive end in the 2024 class, and they are not making much of an effort at all to land a third guy. You've already got Adam Kasaya on board, a 3-star guy, probably a developmental guy. I doubt he's going to be an impact guy as a freshman. And then you got Darian Mayo, who when he committed back in the summer, I would have probably said he needed a year or two. But, man, he has taken a big jump this year. He has been dominant. He's chasing the school record in sacks. He has looked really good. He gives you a lot of length on the outside there on the edge. He's 6'7". Maybe he can come in and help contribute right away. But that third spot, they're not making an effort or much of an effort to land a third. I think they're going to pocket that thing and use it in 2025, which is going to leave an open spot for next year. So, yeah, I do think Clemson's going to at least explore the possibility of adding an end via the portal next year because that might be the position you need it in the most. Yeah, Patterson was a top 100 guy coming out of high school. He was absolutely highly touted. Cade Denoff wasn't. Let me look up what he was right quick, because I remember I want to say he was pretty highly touted coming out of there too. Yeah, he was a top 100 guy too. 92 overall, 13 defensive linemen in the country, the number 14 player in the state of Florida. He was 104 in the composite. So both of those guys, top 100 fringe, top 100 guys, and they've just not developed. Is it him or is it Hall? Clemson used to be a place where defensive ends wanted to come play. I don't get that feeling. I cover recruiting, and I don't get that vibe anymore. Clemson's struggling to land elite-level defensive ends, and I do think NIL plays into that. Make no mistake, but I don't think that's the only reason. Look at what they've had at defensive end over the past since Hall's been there. It took KJ Henry 5 years. It took Justin Maskell 5 years. And if I'm not mistaken, Maskell was fairly highly touted too coming out of high school. Let's see what he was. But it took him 5 years. Denoff, Patterson. I mean, you've got nothing out of those guys. XT, he is what he is. Yeah, Maskell was rated. He was a fringe top 100 guy too. He was rated 24/7 had him 109. The composite had him 142. So 100, 150 in that 100 to 150 range. He was the ninth ranked weak side defensive end in the country in that class. 5 years it took him to get where he is now. And I'm sure there's some other names that I'm forgetting that that have not progressed either. So I think I think that is an area that needs to be looked at. You know, um, again, defensive ends used to want to go to school and play for Clemson and play in that defense, and it's not that way anymore. And it kind of started. That trend started happening before Venables even left. I think. I mean, um, they just aren't landing guys like they once were. It's been a struggle in this class. We'll see what they do in the 2025 class. But I love the Darian Mayo. I think he's got a lot of upside. But again, he's taken a humongous jump since the time he committed in the summer to now. And I think Kasaya's got a lot of potential too, but he's another developmental guy. I mean, can you afford to wait 4 or 5 years to get the production out of him? You need these guys producing, defensive end. You need those guys coming in producing before their third, fourth year. Could Chandler Morris transfer to Clemson? Yeah, I'm not touching that, man. Home run threat at running back. I think Jay Haynes is that. Jay Haynes has definitely got the wheels, no doubt about that, man. He can move. He is a burner. The thing is, he's not 100% healthy, and I don't think you want to burn a red shirt off a guy like that on a season that's going nowhere fast. He weighs 100, 185 pounds. Don't know how far along he is from a learning the system perspective. And you run him out there, everybody in the stadium knows what's going to happen. You're going to run it because you absolutely ain't going to trust him protect your quarterback's blind side. Last time we played Georgia, DJU threw to Nagata for more than 100 yards, and DJU took the beating of a lifetime too. I was on the sideline for that game. He took an absolute beating, and I don't think he was ever fully healthy after that night. The rest of that season, after the beating he took that night. We are absolutely hard at special teams. That is a third of the team not producing, not just the kicking game, but punts and returns. 100% factually correct. For so long, you saw Clemson play it safe, in the return game because they could rely. So they were so confident in the offense's ability to go out and get it done. And now they're still doing the same thing. They play it safe with punt returns, but even this year, fielding punts has been a challenge at times. We've seen Tyler Brown struggle with it, not knowing when to catch them and let them go. Just little things. I know it's the way they coach special teams there is kind of a collaborative effort. I think the practices I've been at, Mike Reed seems to kind of be running a lot of that stuff, but maybe it's time to bring in a true special teams guy. I don't know. I don't have the answer. And I'm not just talking about field goal kicking because that's going to be, that's something different. Yeah, Clemson's not very aggressive in the return game at all. Kick return, punt return, although, most teams don't let you return kicks on them these days. So let's say punt return, but they're not very aggressive in punt returns, and they don't do a lot of coming after the punter and those kinds of things. They just kind of play it safe and put the ball into offensive hands, and it worked for so long. It's not working anymore. It's not working now. Heard there was some fights in the locker room after the game. Well, I can tell you that I was right outside that locker room from the time the game ended to the time those guys started getting on the bus, and you can hear a pin drop in there. So yeah, I ain't buying that. Look, again, I'm not saying there wasn't no words exchanged or those things. There wasn't some kind of big brawl in the locker room. We were close enough to would have heard. We would have heard it. You couldn't hardly hear a peep coming out of that thing. The horrible last 4 minute drive. Yeah, it was not very pretty. You know, not very pretty at all. Remember how good Clemson used to be running a 2 minute offense? They're not that anymore. They are not that anymore. To me, Dabo looked miserable after Notre Dame and the Orange Bowl. Not happy after South Carolina. He's looked miserable after almost every game this year. Like all the problems with his plan are popping up at once. Yeah, he's looked. Yeah, you can tell it's wearing on him, and I get it, man. Fans want to hear him start getting real specific about what the problems are and how he's going to address it, but that's just not the route he's going to take. He never has. He never will. Kind of like last year, man. You didn't. Nobody knew Streeter was getting fired until it happened. You know, and that's probably to be the way it's going to play out this year. But again, like I said earlier, I think he fully believed that he just needed to bring in a new coordinator to oversee the offense, and that was going to solve most of their issues. And man, it's just not worked out that way. The issues just they were rooted deeper than that. This is just not a very well coached team. They don't do the little things well, and you don't do the little things well. I mean, let's brutal truth here. If you're an opponent and you got to play Clemson, all you got to do is play it safe, and Clemson's going to implode at some point. All you got to do is sit back and wait on Clemson to implode, and they're probably going to hand you the victory. I mean, that's just brutal truth. But I've kind of said I said it last year that I thought Clemson was kind of at a crossroads, and Dabo going out and making the Garrett Riley hire. I think most people kind of assumed that was going to be a big step towards getting things headed back in the right direction. Just hasn't worked out that way. So I kind of say he's still at that crossroads. He's still sitting at that 4-way stop, kind of stalled out. This is going to be a big offseason because status quo is not going to cut it. You gotta make some changes. You got to make some changes. It's just a matter of where you make them and what they are. Yeah, Randall does that. He does appear to be getting a little bit of his confidence back. That is absolutely true. He's looked better the last couple of weeks than he did, over the first 6 games. Defense gonna take a big hit next year, losing a lot of blue chip. The defensive line is gonna take a big hit. we'll see what the linebackers do. I don't think you're going to lose both of them. Maybe you do, but I might change my mind on that at some point. Right now, I don't think you lose both of them. But yeah, the defensive line is going to take a hit. Fortunately, Clemson's recruited pretty well along the defensive line. Well, it's particularly along the interior. They got a couple of dudes at end, just not a lot of depth. That's why I think they're going to have to go to the portal or try to go to the portal and in. But man, they're loaded at defensive tackle, and if you get one of those linebackers to come back, I think you're good there, and they're loaded on the back end too. So I don't think they're going to take that too big of a hit, man. There's a bunch of talent on that defense still. It's night and day difference from defense to offense. Cade need to help Cade. The QB is the offense problem. Yeah, we'll agree to disagree there. He is a problem. He ain't the biggest problem. If your offensive line can't block their way out of a wet paper sack, if you don't have a generational quarterback, man, you're gonna be in trouble, man. What can we afford in the portal? Not every player is looking for the highest payday in the portal. There's this ill-conceived notion out there that Clemson does not do NIL, and that's just not true. Clemson's got very well-funded NIL collectives. Um, I have been told over and over. Well, I have been told multiple times by parents of recruits that what Clemson offers in NIL is very competitive. They just don't get into bidding wars. So I mean, I think you can afford some things in the portal. You just might not be able to go out and get the biggest names. I think you can find guys that'll come to play at Clemson. Yeah, this is kind of how I feel. The quarterback's just a part of it, man. He got no running game to take the pressure off of him, man. He's got no offensive line that he can trust to protect him. I mean, it's just it is a joint effort right now. Portal isn't going to help lack of development, but no, portal's not going to help the lack of development. But if you go to the portal and get a guy already developed, you don't have to worry about that because when Clemson goes to the portal, it's going to be to fill a gap. They're going to get a guy that's a graduate transfer, probably 90% of the time. That's who you're talking about. Somebody that's already been in school 3-4 years, already graduated, and he's already got a lot of experience, and he's pretty much developed. Lemansky Hall coaches ends. He's been coaching them since Dan Brooks left. If some coaching changes are made after the year, obviously Jeff Scott would be a target for coaching wide receivers. Have you heard any names for coaching offensive line and running backs? I've not heard any names, and I'm not confident Jeff Scott's going to be satisfied in coming back and just being a wide receiver coach. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy that he wasn't just Clemson's wide receiver coach when he left, man. He was the co-offensive coordinator. He left to be a head coach. I think it's fair to wonder if he's going to be satisfied being just a wide receiver coach. I do think Scott eventually ends up back on the staff. I lean more towards it being an administrative role, though. We'll see. I mean, that's just my opinion based on some things I've heard, but things always change. There's a long time between now and next spring. Cade need to deliver the ball on time where the receiver can catch it. He needs to throw the receivers over and secure the ball. And when the QB improves, then the others will as well. That's kind of like, the chicken and the egg, man. We're just going to agree to disagree here that Cade's a bigger problem than the offensive line because I don't think he is. He's a problem. Yeah, he's not progressing at the rates you need him to progress, but who's to say that the offensive line and not having any semblance of a running game isn't playing a part in that? The guy is pressured on more than 35% of his drop back passes. That's not the recipe for developing a quarterback. He's just not going to get me to buy into the fact that it's all Cade, and when he gets better, the offensive line will get better. To me, it's the other way around. You need to have the offensive line be better in order to get the quarterback better. Eason's got to see defensive ends not developing. Don't be surprised if Dabo keeps offensive staff and replace defensive back. Oh, that would very much surprise me. Very much. But yeah, I mean, you just look at the ends that have come through and see which ones have gotten. I mean, I didn't even mention Miles Murphy earlier. I mean, I don't think that he improved much at all over his 3 years at Clemson. He was kind of about the same as he was when he left as he was when he got there. Now, granted, he was a first-round pick. I get all that, but I'm not sure how much he developed while he was at Clemson. Maybe a little bit, but certainly not to the degree that everyone was expecting. He never evolved into the player everybody envisioned him being when he originally signed with Clemson. It wouldn't hurt my feelings to see Eason take over the whole defensive line, ends and tackles, and that gives you another on-field assistant to, focus on something else. Burn Jarvis Green's red shirt. Yeah, I wouldn't burn anybody's red shirt. Not on a lost season. Not me. Clemson has a great recruiting class coming in for the 24 class. You don't know nothing about football. Yeah, I don't know jack shit about football. You got me there, brother. I only cover recruiting for a living, man. I know absolutely what they got coming in the 2024 class. I never said they didn't have a great class coming in. Matter of fact, I think I absolutely just said about 10 minutes ago they got help on the way. Yeah, don't forget, if you have not already hit that like button, please do so. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, hit the share button, hit them all for us, man. It's not the coaching. You can coach a kid, they don't put the effort into putting that coaching into practice. You see the results on the field. Now I'm halfway with you here. I don't think it's all coaching. I do think there is some coaching involved because you can't tell me every kid on that roster ain't putting in the effort. You will not get me to buy that. This did not look like a well-coached team against Duke. They didn't even look like a team that was in game shape against Duke. You know, they have not looked well coached far more often than not. Um, you know, yeah, I get it. The players has got to take the coaching. Absolutely 100% correct. Um, you telling me every guy on that offense is not coachable? I can't. I have a hard time buying that. Again, I know a lot of y'all want to paint Cade Klubnik as some kind of ego maniac and glory hound and just looking for all the spotlight. But I first talked to Cade Klubnik before he ever committed to Clemson. I have never gotten that kind of vibe off that kid, ever. He is one of the most humble dudes I've ever come across on the recruiting trail. And being around him since he's got to Clemson, nothing has changed my mind or my perspective or my opinion on that. Um, I don't think it's that he's not coachable. I don't think he's not putting in effort. I'm not saying he's being badly coached. I'm just using him as an example. But I don't think all those guys are being coached at the highest level and just not taken to the coaching. But in theory, I agree with what you're saying. The players got to take to the coaching, absolutely. How is Cole Stout over offensive player development? He developed in one game. Hey, well, look, man, you don't have to be a great player to know how to coach. And one thing I'll say about Cole is at least he's gotten some experience from outside of Clemson. He's been a quarterback coach somewhere else. I think he's coached at 2 different schools. He's been on the staff at 2 different schools before he came back to Clemson. Can't say that about some of those other guys. Um, yeah, again, Stout's actually been a quarterback coach somewhere else. It was at a smaller school, but I mean, nonetheless, he's been one. If I was going to be picking on guys, I'd start somewhere else. I take your point, but I don't necessarily agree that you got to be some great player to be a good football coach. This is 100% absolutely true. Every time Clemson has lost this year, Zach has been wearing the same shirt. Same exact one. I wear the same shirt to every game, so can't say I've wore the same. I have wore the same one to every loss, but I have wore the same one to the wins too. Dabo doesn't let Riley do his own coaching. Dabo is calling the plays. I always see Dabo in the offensive circle give Riley a chance to coach. This is 100% unequivocally false. Just pure false. Dabo is not calling the plays. I sat there and watched Dabo for most of the second half just because I knew I was going to get this tonight. I sat there and watched him with binoculars for a large portion of that second half on the sideline. And most of the time, his laminated card that everybody thinks is a play sheet was stuffed in his pants, behind his back. Very rarely did he even bring it out. Sitting here watching Garrett Riley, he's the one signaling in all the plays. Again, I've said this 100 times now. Garrett Riley does not take this job if he is not given the keys to the car. No way, no how, under any circumstances. It just would have never happened. He's got control of the offense. Does Dabo get a say does Dabo have input on whether they go for it on 4th down or does he ever call a play? Sure, all head coaches do, but Garrett Riley's running the offense. Just because you see Dabo in the huddle, that don't mean. I mean, he's in the defensive huddle most of the times too, but nobody's talking about him running the defense. No, he's in both huddles. He's in all the huddles. Riley's running the offense. And if you go back and watch TCU last year and you watch Clemson this year, You will see a bunch of the same formations, a bunch of the same plays. It's just this year they are just not getting executed at the level they were last year, particularly up front. They do not. Clemson does not have a boundary receiver that scares anybody like TCU's first round pick last year. They do not have a quarterback that TCU had in Max Duggan last year, and they absolutely do not have the offensive line or the running game TCU had last year. Too many mistakes. The turnovers is absolutely ridiculous. Something I have not seen in a long time. No, these turnovers, man, it is. I've not seen it in a long time either. I have not seen it in a long time. I don't know that I've ever seen a team hamstrung by turnovers the way Clemson has been this season, especially when you consider how many of them were directly resulted in 7 points the other way. You know, it is mind blowing, man. Again, another pick six Saturday, and flat out on the offensive line, man. You have got to keep your hands in that guy's chest. Got to keep your hands in his chest so he does not have a chance to get up, knock that pass down. That play was there, man. That play was there. Yes, my bad. Marion Hobby, when Dan Brooks was the defensive tackles coach. My bad. You are correct. I always get that. I always mix that up 99% of the time. So you are basically saying without a generational QB, Dabo can't win. No, I'm not saying that at all. Mm-mm. No, I don't think that's the case at all. We saw Clemson win in 2017 with Kelly Bryant. He was far from a generational quarterback. Did they win a national title? No, but we saw Clemson adapt and adjust that offense to do what to fit his strengths, and they made a march to the playoff and probably would have won a first round game if they'd have been matched up with anybody else but Alabama. Alabama they just had the defense that could shut Clemson's running game down and turn them one dimensional, and Bryant couldn't. Bryant was not the quarterback that was going to beat him with his arm. But no, I don't think Dabo's got to have a generational quarterback. No, but I think when you don't have a generational quarterback, it makes it that much more important that your offensive line is cohesive, that you've got the pieces in place at the skill spots, and Clemson doesn't have that right now. Klubnik's got getting very little help, and Klubnik's a guy that still has a lot of growing up to do. You know, I mean, and he's not getting a lot of help. Hopefully, Scott will be co-OC and recruiting coordinator too. I don't think you can make him co-OC as long as Garrett Riley's there. Take away the points off turnovers this year, and you're looking at a slightly better football team 10 record wise, but still nowhere near perfect. No, nowhere near perfect. You're probably looking at you might be looking at a 1-loss team, maybe a 2-loss team. Maybe, I don't know. If they clean up the turnovers, maybe they're sitting here at 7-1 instead of 4-4. But no, nowhere near perfect. But if you don't have all those turnovers at a certain point, man, that's got to be a mental thing, right? You start playing timid, you start playing tight, and you're almost waiting. You're almost waiting on it to happen. You're almost waiting on the next bad thing to occur, and you start playing to try to avoid it. instead of just cutting it loose and let it rip. And I think that's had an impact on this offense too. Yeah, we get it, man. A lot of people's talking about it. That don't mean they're right. Garrett Riley's calling the plays. You know, we get it, man. Everybody wants to put the blame somewhere. So, do you think Dabo just started calling plays this year, or did he just start calling plays last year, or has he been doing it the whole time? Because he didn't, it's not. We're talking about Dabo Sweeney, man. This if he's been doing that, he's been doing it the whole time since Chad Morris left. And if he's been doing it the whole time since Chad Morris left, did he suddenly forget how to do it? Does he suddenly not know how to call plays anymore? What's happened since then? I don't get it. Every head coach is involved in the offensive huddles, pretty much. That goes on everywhere. That is proof of nothing. Y'all think everybody thinks that Dabo's laminated cars is the play sheet. It's not. Look what Garrett Riley carries around. His little folded up little cards. That's the play sheet. Dabo's got all his situational stuff on that laminated thing. All the third down situations, fourth down situations, what you're going to do in this case, what you're going to do in this case. It's a bunch of stuff on that thing, man. Lot more on there than play calls. And if you sit there and watch him closely, you can absolutely 100% unequivocally tell he is not calling the plays. People just want a scapegoat, and you know, Dabo Sweeney's the easy one since he's been here forever and he's the head coach, and Garrett Riley's the new flashy toy. You know, it can't be him, right? But you know, it's not my opinion that Dabo's not running the offense. That is not my opinion. I don't say that based off opinion. I say that off talking to people that I trust and that have been around that team for a long time. Yes, they took more than one snap under center, but that was Clemson also took snaps under center in the Wake Forest game, man. People have forgotten about that. They ran the jumbo package out there and got 1 yard in 2 plays. I don't think Case trusts his line or his arm aired out, take interceptions, explosive plays. I don't think Case trusts the offensive line. No. I do think he trusts his arm. I'm not sure he trusts everything he sees right now. That I think it was the play that he took the intentional grounding, or no, not the intentional grounding, but the one that he tried to throw it away on that final drive. I think it was when he got sacked and he tried to throw it away, and his knees hit the ground, and they went and reviewed it. On that play there, I think this is the one where when he was rolling out, before he started to roll out, he kind of pump fake to Brenningstool and hesitated. He had Brenningstool open. Brenningstool had a man. I just don't think maybe there is a little bit of something he's not trusting his arm right now. I don't think that was the case earlier in the season though, but maybe there is a little something to that right now because he wouldn't take the shot. He didn't trust something. So that I think there's something to that. He pulled it back down and took off running, and it was there. Brenningstool was open, man. He had to step on his guy. All he had to do was drop it in there. Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of people in here agree that Miles Murphy was at his best during his freshman year. Who do I think is going to win the state championship? I I don't know. Man, that South Florence defense is strong, brother. Strong. That running game strong. Much was made about starting Cade last year. Would he have been any better last year than 4-4 with CK2 and not DJU? Lots of fans with large mouths but small ideas. I think we are seeing now why Cade did not start last year. You know, so many people tried to say, he wasn't ready and nobody was buying it. And now it turns out that was exactly the case. Does he grow up any faster if you run him out there last year? I'm not sure he does. And maybe it stunts his development. Who knows? If you put a guy out there that's not ready, you're risking doing more harm than good. Um, I never wavered. I always maintained last year there was a reason why they kept rolling with DJ, and we're seeing it this year. I believe Cade is trying too hard because of the pressure. Look, I do think Cade tries to do too much. That's what I don't think his ego or trying to be a hero or anything like that. I just think he is a guy that he has no faith in his protection. He's getting no help in his running game. How much would just a serviceable rushing attack take some of the pressure off of this young quarterback? It would also open up more things in the passing game. Right now, he's kind of like I think he feels like a man on the island, and I think it does lead to him trying to do too much and again trying too hard. Cade won every single game he played in high school. He is not the problem. Yeah, I think it's far too early to give up on Klubnik. He's definitely not where I thought he was going to be at, but I do not think he's the biggest problem on the offense. I do think he is part of the problem right now because the game still just seems too fast for him in the bigger moments. And he puts the ball on the ground too much. I would say he is at least part of the problem. I just think if you get that offensive line fixed and give him a running game to go to help him out, I think that would go a long ways towards his development and his growth. You can blame me. I can shoulder that responsibility. I have not came and blessed the man cave yet. I've actually got to run out to Hyman paper here at some point soon. I will make sure to come bless it that day I'm out that way. How about that? Because I'm pretty sure Hyman paper is right down the road from where you live. Well, hey, man, we very much appreciate you tuning in. Cade's turnovers cost Clemson 14 points. That is not the offensive line or running back's fault. The pick six, I absolutely put on the offensive line. That guy's got to keep his hands in his chest, in that defensive lineman's chest. He didn't do it. The fumble, the sack fumble, I put that on the offensive line. They they did not do something right on that play. That thing's not designed to let that guy come through free like that. I don't know how you just let the offensive line completely off the hook there. How long is Shipley out? He is in concussion protocol. He's going to be probably. They won't know if he's going to play this week till probably maybe even he might be a game time decision. I don't know. I would be surprised if he plays. Think you'll get another. I think you get another chance to see Maffa as the guy this week. Running the same offense, it looks like the screenplays, not throwing the ball past the first line mark. If you know what you're looking for, you can tell it's not the same offense. I promise you. It's not. I another thing I said 100 times over the summer. The screen passes were not going away. It was a big part of what Garrett Riley did at TCU. Doesn't mean he's running the same offense, man. The formations are different. The route trees are different. Heck, even the spacing along the offensive line is different. There's so many things that are different. But when you strip all that stuff away, an inside zone still an inside zone. A counter still a counter. A QB draw still a QB draw. A wide receiver screen still a wide receiver screen. A post is still a post. Every offense has got those plays. It's a matter of how you dress them up and present them to the opposing defenses that makes a lot of the difference. I don't know if South Florence has got a. I don't know if South Florence has got the passing game. They've not played anybody that has forced them to have to throw the ball. They do not. Their quarterback he's okay, but he is nowhere near Lenore Sellers, man. Their passing game is a shell of its former self. But you'll be hard. I would bet almost anything they've got the best defense in the state. And that running game and that offensive line is stout. But if you can find a way to make them have to throw the ball around a little bit, that's how you beat them. West Side or South Point. South Florence already beat South Point this year at their place. If they have to play again, they're going to have to come down here this time. Ellis also questioned exactly what Dabo is getting out of bringing Tyson in as an experienced QB to help the room. I'm starting to agree that isn't helping progress either. I don't think that's necessarily the biggest reason why Tyson was brought in. I think he was brought in to be the backup. And then he got hurt in the spring, and he couldn't beat out Hunter. Period. End of story. I think that is exactly what he was brought into Clemson for, to be the backup. And he did not win the job. I agree. He's not really helping Cade progress. I don't even think he's a take if they know they're going to be as tight on numbers as they were. He's not even on this team. He just happened to jump on board so early. But yeah, he's not added very much. I didn't like the take when they did it. I understand why. I didn't like it when they did it. I didn't like the Hunter Johnson take last year. Who is the top players in the state Clemson is looking at? 2025 class of Maury Adams plays at South Florence. He is probably the top player in the state. He's got a Clemson offer, but Clemson's not going to land him. There's a kid in the 2024 class. He plays running back at Belton Homeopath, Marquise Henderson. We'll see. Clemson's not offered him, and Clemson's not going to offer him as a running back. They've already got their 2024 running back, or excuse me, he's a 2025 running back. Clemson's already got their 2025 running back. But I would not be surprised if they offered him, as a athlete or a receiver. Probably an athlete, and maybe see if he could play slot. Because I know when he was at camp during the summer, they worked him out at slot some. So wouldn't shock me to see him offer him as an athlete maybe and see if he fits better at slot or DB. But other than that, that's about it as far as inside the state right now. Yeah, I don't really know anything about West Side. Again, South Florence and South Point played earlier this year. South Florence squeaked one out up there. I think it was 22-19. And Burns, West Florence went to Burns a few weeks ago and just got punked. I mean, absolutely punked. Shut them out. Burns shut West Florence out. Is Shipley overrated? Should Maffa be the main man? I've always kind of thought Maffa was the more well-rounded back. Neither one of them's a home run threat. Neither one of them's got breakaway speed. I do think Maffa's been a little bit better than Shipley this year. I also think Maffa's yard per carry stats are a little skewed by some long runs because both of them, to me, have overall been about the same. It's kind of been a yard or two in a cloud of dust and never moved the sticks. There's just not much room to run behind this offensive line, and neither one of those guys have been good at making something out of nothing. But yeah, I am. I would be interested to see Moffitt get an opportunity as the primary back for more than 2/3 of a game. Let's see him get it the whole game, maybe a couple games in a row, and see what he does. Yes, I should also mention this. I'm glad you reminded me. I'm glad you said this. One recent positive is seeing the tight end stepping up and getting more involved in the passing game. Brennan Stool has absolutely been a positive the past 2 weeks, and I need to make sure I say that again because I spent weeks ragging on him. So I need to make sure I give him his props when they are due. He is really starting to look like the guy they recruited him to Clemson to be. Um, so he has absolutely been a bright spot, one of the few. What worries me is if this is like 2010 all over, it will take another 5 years to build back up. It shouldn't. It shouldn't. The program's already built. There's already a lot of talent on the roster compared to 2010, where it wasn't built and there wasn't as much talent on the roster. It shouldn't take 5 years to build it back up. Why is it hard for Clemson to dominate recruiting in the state compared to the chickens down the road? Clemson does not do a whole lot of recruiting in the state anymore. They take their swings on some guys here and there, but most of the time, the school that the kid grew up rooting for is who's going to win the battle. Most of the time, that's what it's going to come down to: who they grew up rooting for. Plain and simple. They I mean, think about it. If you grew up a diehard Clemson fan and you had an opportunity to go play for South Carolina, or you had an opportunity to go play for Clemson, who are you choosing? Are you going to say no to Clemson and go to South Carolina when you grew up rooting for Clemson all your life? And these kids that grew up Gamecock fans, same thing. They're not going to pass that up either. Richardson is the best position coach on offense. You don't have to do me. You don't have to convince me about Kyle Richardson. I don't care that Dabo plucked him out of the high school ranks. I think that guy is I think he is one of the I think he's a hot shot, up and coming coach. I think he has a brilliant offensive mind. He might very well be the next offensive coordinator at Clemson when Garrett Riley leaves. Depending on the timing and those kind of things. But I think Kyle Richardson's got a very bright future in coaching, and it ain't just coaching tight ends, and he's been really good at that. We'll end it on this one. You are right. It shouldn't take 5 years to build it back up, but you never know. Look at Nebraska after they started going down. That's why I said it shouldn't take 5 years to build it back up. I didn't say wouldn't, I don't think. I think I said shouldn't. Shouldn't take 5 years to build it back up. I do my best to try to never speak in absolutes for that very reason. All right. That's going to wrap us up tonight. I can't go 2 hours tonight. My wife's already come in here and told me I had 10 minutes or my dinner was going to be cold. We had another good show tonight. I can tell up here we had a good crowd, man. Good crowd in the comments. Again, if you've not hit that subscribe button, please do so. I know most of you have already subscribed. But I think we have some new viewers tonight. If you haven't subscribed, please do hit that like button, man. And if you want to share it out too. Me and Zach will be right back here Wednesday night with Paul Talk. We'll dive into some more stuff you guys want to dive into, and don't forget, check out Death Valley Domain. It's the paid part of the site. Allclemsontigers.com. Most of my recruiting stuff goes there now. The mail bags and the interviews and those kind of things are still on the regular site, but all the rest of the recruiting stuff's going behind the paywall. And it's it's not expensive. It's like only $4.99 a month or $40 a year. So we tried to price it as reasonably as we could. Just something we had to do. Not something we wanted to do, just had to do. Check it out. But hey, man, again, appreciate everybody tuning in. And if who hard times asking about the shades, if you haven't seen last week's show, go back and watch it at least at the beginning. See y'all next Monday night, man. 7 p.m. Every same time, same channel every week. See y'all then.